So the question is not so much, was Larry real? What if they were real? Because I think they're real, but there is a lot of people out there that are either new to the Larry story or they're not new to the Larry story, but they're still in the realm of, I'm not sure, maybe, I don't know. And it's more like a fun excursion to speculate whether it was real or not, because people can have a lot of fun with playing detective, right? And Larry's one of those ships where you could just have fun dwelling in the unknown, because there's all this, what's the word, circumstantial quote unquote evidence that they were together, that they're not together, that they are together now, and it's almost more fun not to know, because there's so many potential clues, maybe clues, and possible coding and signaling that can keep you occupied. It's it's the perfect ship for romantic people that have investigative type thinking, right? So, nonetheless, let's just, for the sake of argument, think if you were someone who was more the person that dwelled in the probabilities, but were never looking for a conclusion, had fun with Larry, and suddenly found yourself asking, what if this is not just a ship? Because ships have involved fictional characters. They've involved co-stars that were never involved, but had very good chemistry with the characters they played. So ships don't necessarily reflect actual couplings. They also reflect romantic coupling wishes, right? But what if you're somebody that's been playing in the space of they just love shipping because you have a creative streak, and you like playing with some of the software that can put together hodgepodge of images in a really cool way. And then one day you wake up and you go, wait, what if Larry Stylinson was not just a ship? What if Larry Stylinson, the Harry Styles and Louis Tomlinson romance, really were in love? And not just in fan fiction, not just in soft smiles and matching tattoos, but in real life. Because imagine waking up and realizing it was in plain sight, it was just in front of me, and I'm finally seeing it, as if you suddenly got glasses for your perception, even if your vision was 20/20. And then, what if they were real? And what if they were forced to hide it? So, we're not just asking if Larry was real, because I personally think it is real. I think they're still together. But we are asking what it means to those who have found that their perspective on Larry is shifting from a fun ship to an actual serious question of what it means if it was real to them. They're finally cluing in. And for those people, how that possibility has shaped a generation of fans. The themes of the obsession, the grief, the trauma, and even the healing. Because Larry is a story of love behind closed doors, and of the fans who refuse to stop looking for the key to set them free from the closet. So, chapter 1, the hypothetical that feels too real. So let's begin with a question. What if Larry Stylinson was a closeted relationship? Well, that's kind of my position, but for those who are in the I don't know yet, let's ponder this hypothesis. So, not a PR, not delusion, just two young men thrust into a machine who fell in love. Now imagine you're 18, you're in the biggest boy band on earth. You're told you can't be seen touching him, you can't say his name in interviews, you're assigned fake girlfriends, and if you break the rules, your contract is on the line. So this is the hypothetical that haunts the Larry fandom, because so many of them, especially fans that are LGBTQ plus and allies, see they see themselves or the stories of people close to them in it. It's very close to home. And that's how Larry became more than a ship. It became a symbolic survival. Chapter 2, when the love story ends in silence. So if Larry was real, for those who are just getting with the program and position themselves in it was real, but they're no longer together, right? then it ended long before it should have. So if we're thinking of like the Whois, the Houis, the people who believed that they were together and now they were they were broken apart because of all the pressures of Simon and Psycho and modest management. So then Larry ended. So if Larry ended before it should have, it meant that it didn't end in heartbreak. It wasn't heartbreak that put a stop to it. It was the containment of Larry that was unfair and artificial. So the eye contact had stopped, the photos ended, and Louis began denying it angrily, according to some. Harry fell silent. To the outside world, the story just stopped. But to fans, this was not closure, it was censorship. Absolutely. And when you believe someone was forced to stop loving, it doesn't just feel sad, it almost feels violent, especially when you've lived that reality yourself, when your own love was silenced, mocked, erased. So fans did not move on, they mourned. And then they started documenting, archiving, decoding, and Secret Love Song, that just added fuel to the flame. Because maybe, just maybe, they could they could say what Harry and Louis could not. Chapter 3. Fandom is resistance, fandom is projection. Larry fandom is often unfairly dismissed as obsessive. But if Larry was real and closeted, then the fandom became the counter-narrative engine. Every matching tattoo, every lyric, every stolen glance on stage. It was proof collection, not just of love, but of suppressed truth. For many fans, it wasn't about voyeurism. It was about emotional justice. Because if these boys were forced to hide their love, then the world owed them visibility, even if it was retroactive. But here's where it may have gotten complicated, because elements of fandom are also projection. And sadly, many Larry fans were closeted themselves or recovering from religious, cultural, or familial trauma. Larry was not just Harry and Louis, it was them. And you don't even need to be someone who was closeted. You could even be heteronormative, but for whatever reason, whether it was about class, caste, social hierarchy, there are reasons that even heteronormative pairs are forced apart, even though on the surface nobody is quote unquote opposing them. But opposition is not just about orientation, it's about many, many things. So if a person had been in this situation for whatever reason and endured the pain of it, then Larry, the more real it felt about what happened to Larry, the more devastating it became when the silence held. Chapter 4. The trauma of believing and not being believed. So imagine telling the world a love story matters, and then the world laughs unfairly. Well, that's fandom trauma, and I have said the Larrys get very, very unfairly treated. Larry shippers were not just mocked, they were pathologized, even though there's so many other ships out there that are putting together two people that for sure are not in relationships, because it's a fan dream that two co-stars get together, right? But they're with other people. And yeah, the Larrys have been really, really abused and pathologized. They've been called crazy. They've been called delusional. They've been called fangirls just projecting fantasies. Well, that's what fandom is. It's projection. But if Larry was real, then right, then that mockery becomes gaslighting, and gaslighting is a form of abuse. Thousands of people saw the same signals, they felt the same grief, and they carried the same conviction. And they were told it was all in their heads. That creates a trauma loop, one where you're grieving something that was never officially allowed to exist. And that grief doesn't get closure, it just loops. Because Harry and Louis never say it, but they never really deny it either. Not convincingly, obviously not convincingly, and not completely. So the fans are left spinning in doubt, in hope, in obsession. That's not drama. That's unresolved trauma. Chapter 5. The myth of the parasocial fan. It's easy to dismiss fandoms as parasocial, projecting intimacy onto people they've they've never met, or they'll never meet. But what if the parasociality was actually mutual in some circumstances, in some instances, in some particular dynamics? What if Harry wanted to be seen? What if Louis was trying to protect someone? What if their love story was real and fandom became its only public archive? We think of fan behavior as one-sided, but you know what? Art is a conversation. And Harry and Louis, whether intentionally or not, they did leave breadcrumbs, songs, tattoos, lyrics with pronouns that changed. Remember how Harry changed the words to "I can love you more than this" to "I can love you more than Stan," who's a childhood best friend of Louis, and Harry was always really, really jealous. Um, so if Larry was real, then these were not coincidences. These were acts of coded communication. And the fans, well, they were listening because they understood what it means to speak in code. Chapter 6, the grief that never got validated. So if Larry was real, then the fandom's grief is legitimate. They didn't just lose a ship, they lost a version of reality that mattered to them. And worse, they were never allowed to grieve openly because admitting the loss would mean admitting the love was real. So fans learned to suppress, to hide the pain in jokes, edits, reaction gifs, to turn heartbreak into content. But make no mistake, this was mourning, not of two celebrities, but of a love story that the world wouldn't let live. Chapter 7, Why It Still Matters. You might be wondering, why are people still talking about Larry 15 plus years on? It's been over a decade since One Direction played their last show. Because if Larry was real, then the world buried a queer love story in real time. And people who watch that happen are still trying to make it right because they saw something real and they were told it wasn't. Because they loved something deeply and were told to be ashamed. And because every time Harry wears a green and blue outfit, every time Louis quotes a song about forbidden love, every time the silence feels just a little too loud, they remember and they hurt and they heal, all of it together. So maybe Larry was real. I say it is real. I don't think they ever got away from each other, thank God. Their bond was too strong. That's just my opinion. I don't know anything. I don't know these people. I'm speculating. And if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. But I I personally think that there is something to the fact that suddenly they're both in the press at the same time, and then suddenly no one spotted them for a couple days around the same time. Like that's been going on for years because they're hanging out. That's again my theory. Um, so maybe Larry was real, maybe it wasn't, maybe it doesn't even matter anymore. Oh, yes, it does. But the impact was real. The love the fans carried was real. The trauma of watching it disappear, also incredibly real. Because fandoms don't just ship people, they actually remember them. And sometimes remembering is the only way to keep a story alive. So, did Larry Stylinson help you make sense of your own story? Like I said, it's not just because Little Mink said that Secret Love Song was about a same sex couple. And people began saying in the fandom, I think Louis wrote the song. I think Louis wrote the song. Well, I think Harry wrote the song. So Larry is universal. It's not, it's there's a lot of queer coding, but it's not exclusive just for same sex unions. It's for everybody. Because anyone who's ever had their own version of Romeo and Juliet, I think Romeo and Juliet's kind of sappy, by the way, but you know what I mean. Anyone who's ever had an interference because of a prejudice, because of control or whatever it is, and suffered unnecessarily, did not have a natural end, or did not enjoy the natural life that a union would have taken if it had not been for interference, they deserve to be witnessed. They deserve to be heard. And Larry unites a collective that knows all too well, all too intimately, what it was like to have your happiness stomped on for no reason other than somebody's ego or somebody's notion of what was right. And this is why Larry will always matter.